Welcome back. Bringing a great idea into fruition requires time and resources. But what happens if you develop an idea only to find out that it has a fatal flaw if you don't have enough resources to develop your idea at all? So this week we discussed the benefits and the potential pitfalls of selling your idea to a corporate client early on in the process. Gavin Symanowitz, founder of blockbusterinnovation.com, is still with us. Joining him at the desk, Mark Castel, founder and CEO of Rogue Rally. Jessica and Tante Sizwe are still with us at the desk here. So Mark, I'm going to throw straight to you because you came up with a great idea, and here you're here to give us the example that, and teach us some of the lessons that you have learned from going to big corporates and getting sponsors and the process that you've gone through. But first off, tell us about Rogue Rally, the first one being held this year.
Rogue Rally is pretty much a supercar rally around the country. We had 53 supercars over 6 days and 7 nights, blasting around the country. We had closed road sections, race circuits, gymkhanas, drags. It's a really octane, fun-filled week.
What made it different?
Compared to...
Well, anything else? I mean, why was your idea so unique?
Because it's the first time South Africa's ever had a real supercar rally. So we only allowed Porsches, Ferraris, Lamborghinis, McLarens, Aston Martins. So it really was a high-level rally around the country. It's the first time it's been done in Africa. It's been done quite a bit in the States and the UK. So it's pretty much taking one of their ideas, making it better, and bringing it to South Africa. So a lot of things on the rally we did 10 times better than international rallies, where we had like Pirelli support trucks with tires, we had medical response, we had a medical evacuation helicopter. So we really went all out, and I think did it better than the guys over the pond.
So there we go. You saw a great idea.
Yeah.
You thought this could be applicable, and we could, have something like this in South Africa. Now you've got to go and find the money to make it happen. What was the process you used there?
It was very difficult. We tried the traditional routes, knocking on corporate doors, the large corporate doors and that type of thing. Had no success with that. And I realized pretty quickly it's all about your network and who you know and who your friends' friends know. And it really boiled down to, after all the corporates, after all the knocking doors, we actually got the money from a local company who I actually know very well. So that's how it came down to it. So from a sponsor point of view, the cash came from somebody I actually knew. The partners came on board who sponsored services and product like the Daytona Group, Legacy Lifestyle, Helivac, Pirelli tires. They got on board pretty early on because I just loved the idea, and hopefully they liked me.
Just a quick one, with the big corporates, why were they turning you down, do you think? Did they give you reasons for
it's very difficult in year one. You're selling an idea, you're not really selling a product. And I was very aware of the fact that going into it, I was actually selling an idea and a concept, and I had to sell myself. They had to buy into me to buy into my idea. So it's very difficult to say, this is going to happen, this is going to happen, this is the crowd, this is the PR, this is the free TV, radio, print, online, we're going to get out of this, and the exposure for you will be X. That was very difficult. So I was pretty much selling an idea, and I think when it comes to big corporates, they're not big on ideas. They want you to do the first year. A lot of the guys, the bigger guys, said to me, well, put off the first year, can't speak to you about the second year. So
they don't want to take the risks.
They don't want to take the risk, and I totally understand it. It is a big idea. It's something different. Luckily, it was something very exciting, so we did get a lot of support from people. And I must say, what really helps is the support you get from certain partners, backers, friends, companies. Initially keeps you driving and keeps you going on.
I just want to pick up on the idea of the idea. It's always interesting in terms of how do people like you, entrepreneurs, go about developing the idea, honing it, and then presenting it as a commercial thing that could potentially bring money to the investor. A lot of people have these ideas. They either develop them in a little corner, scared someone might steal it, but then you go and sell it and someone pokes holes at it, and you realize, actually I should have been open-minded and talked to a lot of people. Perhaps I would have been able to pick up these holes and actually close them. In your case, how did you develop this idea? How long did it take for you? Did you just present an idea, or did you present something that could potentially show the investor, there's money?
This has been something that's been coming for the last 16 years. I mean, in my early 20s, I used to buy the box sets of the international rallies from the States and the UK and that type of thing. And I've been an avid fan my whole life. Only really recently I had the resources and the time to actually to start planning the rally myself and my own way of doing it, and my own ideas and my own inputs and my own events. So it's taken a hell of a long time. It took about 2 years of planning to get to the 16th of June, which when the first rally was just come and gone. And it's just a lot of time, a lot of hard work, a lot of sweat, a lot of blood, a lot of input from people in the know. And obviously on the rally we had quite a few problems, and there were a lot of holes poked at the rally during the rally, but it was all very good constructive criticism, and there's nothing like learning while you're running. And
yeah, Gavin, let's talk about how we can take what happened with Rogue Rally, because of course tapping into a network there, a passion of yours, so of course passion always helps entrepreneurs, but how can this apply to other entrepreneurs? I mean, especially when it comes to the fact that corporates shut the door on Mark's face.
They did, and it's actually quite common, because you often have an entrepreneur who's got an idea, and they'll go to the big corporate and they'll say, this is what I want to do, and they kind of sell their vision to the big corporate. Now, if you put yourself in their shoes, they've got two options. The one is that they can sponsor it and give you the money, but the risk that they face is that it falls completely flat. They don't know about you, and that's kind of the problem that you faced, is that you hadn't done it before. They didn't know whether you could deliver or not, and obviously you sold yourself well enough at the end that you managed to get it off the ground and you got these sponsors on board. But companies don't want to take that type of risk up front, so they would rather that you did it first, and then they can see how it worked, and then they're prepared to sponsor it up front. Or the opposite, where they say, that's a great idea. In fact, we'll take that on ourselves and run it, because we know that we can implement it better. We're not sure about you. It's a little bit risky, but we know we've got the resources and the know-how and the skills to actually make it work. And then they go and run it on behalf. And actually, very often, that's a better option for the entrepreneur than trying to do everything themselves.
So a lot of it, sorry Sam, so a lot of it comes down to the credibility and the experience of the actual entrepreneur.
I think so. I mean, if you're the one who's assessing it, if you, like, let's put you in the face of Pirelli, for example. So Pirelli, high performance tires, and on the face of it seems like a good fit with high performance cars, and from a branding point of view, it's in the right space. But if Mark goes and runs this thing and it just falls completely flat, and guys crash all over the place, and there's lots of media exposure about people getting drunk and driving, then that's really damaging for Pirelli. And so Pirelli says, well, we actually don't want to be involved in this, but by then it's too late. So, they just want to take the risk out.
At what stage does the entrepreneur decide, now is the time for me to approach the corporate and present my idea?
I think sooner rather than later. What often happens is entrepreneurs think, I've got this great idea and it has to be perfect and completely developed by the time I take it to the corporate, so they can just pick it up and launch it. What they don't realize is very often the actual work involved in launching a product is significant and way more than they had anticipated. And not only that, but there's a lot of problems with their product in the first place. So they may have wasted 3 years worth, in fact that's a story that I wrote about, they wasted 3 years of their life trying to get this thing perfect, or in their mind is perfect, but actually in fact there's a whole lot of issues with it. The earlier you can go to the company with your idea and say, this is what I want to do, you can get their feedback, you can incorporate what their concerns are into your product offering, so that when you can go back with a final finished product, it meets all their needs, it meets the strategic objectives, etc.
But looking back though, I mean, do you think that there was a problem with the way that you approached the corporates? Would you do it differently this time around? Because I'm just thinking, if you went to a mother at a big corporate who was, marketing manager, PR manager, whatever she may be, in charge of the marketing budget, she might kind of not really have any affinity with the Rogue Rally in South Africa. But if you went to someone who of course likes fast cars, likes this idea, he'd be someone who'd be an ambassador for your idea and sell the idea, and perhaps it's who you pitch it to and how you pitch it, and you need to do a bit of research around that.
Look, definitely. The first is always very difficult, and there's quite a few things I would do differently, but I did go to quite a few people really early on the stage. About a year and a half before the rally started, I went to the likes of like the Daytona Group, who the McLaren, Aston Martin dealers, and had their support from the very beginning. So I did go to them quite early up front, and those were like my strongest supporters I went to around the beginning. But it came to trying to find the actual cash amount, which happened a year ago. That's when it became very difficult. So to do anything differently, yes, I'd hire a sponsorship company to find the sponsorship for me.
Can you reveal, Mark, how much you had to raise and how much you managed to raise?
I needed to raise about 6 million rand to run the rally, and I did raise that. That was part cash, part sponsors. The biggest sponsor was the AdReach Group, who the guys who do all the street pod ads. They were fantastic. They believed in me. The CEO, Brad Fisher, really believed in me, and without him, it would not have happened.
Gavin, now, having now approached the corporate, do I need to protect my idea? How can I protect it from it being stolen?
Yeah, it's very difficult to protect it. Firstly, people think that you sign an NDA and that will cover me. In reality, though, NDAs aren't really worth the paper they're written on. Excuse the pun. Because
do you find that happens a lot? Companies?
well, I think a lot of companies, firstly, won't sign an NDA in the first place because it's just not procedure. And secondly, even if they do, the reality is if the company does steal it after an NDA, it'll go to court, and whoever's got the deeper pockets is going to end up winning. So as a small entrepreneur, you can't fight it. I know lawyers will probably disagree with me, but the reality, the practical reality on the ground is that it's not really worth doing. And actually, the risk of the company stealing your idea is a lot lower than people think. People think that I've got this great idea, companies are going to hear about it, and then they're going to go away and steal my idea and keep me out of the loop, etc. The reality is companies have a whole bunch of projects that they're currently working on with a whole lot of resources that are currently allocated to certain projects. For you to come in with a brand new project, they have to reallocate resources, they have to hire new people to work on the project potentially. And they'd actually rather work with you to get that very often the idea developed rather than take it themselves and run with it. It de-risks it a lot to some extent as well. If they can put in their own resources, for example, their brand, their customer base, sometimes their capital, if you actually run with it and bring in what you uniquely bring to the party, then it's a partnership made in heaven.
And you also mentioned not necessarily going straight for the leader in the field, not necessarily the biggest brand or company in a certain sector.
Yeah, I mean, that's another common perception, is that if I've got a new idea, that I should go to the market leader because they can make the most profit out of my idea. And actually, that's not always the best approach, because the market leader is usually in a dominant position. They're very happy with the status quo. They're not really that open to change. Whereas if you go to someone who's sort of second or third down the line, who's much more motivated to do something different, to actually improve their market position, to try to topple the leader, they're usually much more open to new ideas and new ways of approaching things.
So what have you learned in terms of fundraising now and finding sponsors? Because the first time around, I'm sure, is always the hardest. You managed to pull this event off very successfully. First one in Africa, as you say. What's the biggest takeaway you get in terms of finding that money?
I think it's all about who you know, unfortunately, and who your network knows. You never know how big your network is until you put it into practice. I never knew how large my network was until I started the Rogue Rally. It's amazing how many people you can actually reach and get a good referral to. And that's how I got into like the bigger corporates like the MTN, the Celsius, the Westbanks, the Shells, etc., etc. It was through networks and through people who I knew and people that they knew. So the biggest things I'd say is look after the network you have and grow your network from a very young age. Just look after the people you know and the group you know, especially in business. That's the biggest help I had.